mami, kukukonda zoche, la vie baby wanga, la vie baby wanga, la vie.
Lou X with Soche. This week on The Challenge, Nakis for Shizo with Pachalo versus Lou X with Soche. Vote now.
Hello there, thank you so much that you could find time to join us on Business Morning today, and definitely we are going to look at the importance of business entrepreneurship in the country's economic development. As usual, being a Wednesday, we do feature the business entrepreneur, motivational speaker and author, Mr. Lewis Simpungwe Chizu, and we do discuss a lot of issues, like you can tell from the topic under discussion today. And the key words are business entrepreneurship and the country's economic development. Mr. Chizu, thank you so much for finding time to join us again today.
I'm thrilled to be here, Mr. Steve.
All right. Last week we were looking at managing change. The last time we featured on this program, we did look at managing change. What is just a brief look at what we did manage to have the last time we had the program?
Yes, Steve, I remember that last time I was here, I should have made mention that most people have the fear of the unknown. So fear of the unknown comes with a lot of anxiety. So that's why most people don't like change. Then the other point that I should have said was that, fear threatens some of the people that hold certain positions, or rather some of the groupings that are in certain positions of power. So when change comes, probably they get threatened because of the uncertainty of what that change might bring. So having said that, Stephen, I think I do remember that we did also allude to the fact that change should be embraced with a positive outlook, with a positive connotation, in the sense that change comes with it a lot of benefit, or rather brings with it a lot of benefits. And one of the benefits that we did identify or point out was the fact that change will make people to experience new things as well as learn new things, therefore giving them, much more exposure to life, which they didn't have initially. And I think the second benefit that I think we did identify was the fact that change brings up, exciting and new experiences to people's lives that, adds value to their old lives, or their old lifestyle of living their lives. So that was another benefit, which we pointed out as second. I think the third benefit that we did talk about was the fact that nothing new and nothing good will ever come in people's lives without change. And to sum it the whole discussion up, I think we did conclude to say that anything that does not change has no life in it. It means that it is a dead situation. So everything that has got life, it means that it has got to embrace change. Change is inevitable in life. And I think that is one critical part of life. And we must accept change as it were, because it will be able to make our lives better from a positive point of view.
Getting back to the topic under discussion today, which is the importance of business entrepreneurship in the country's economic development. The two core words there, business entrepreneurship entrepreneurship. What is this all about?
Yeah, I'm sure, Steve, you know that anything that has to do with the entrepreneurship entails courage and risk-taking. So, in a simple definition, I would say that business entrepreneurship is simply having the courage to take up the risk to undergo private undertakings so as one way of creating yourself a living, or rather a revenue for self-sustainability. I think that is the best simple term in which you can define business entrepreneurship, as it were.
What about economic development as in relation to the country?
Yeah, I think, Steve, you learned that when you cannot talk economic development without talking of business entrepreneurship, because these are some sort of, they do coexist. You learn with time that business entrepreneurs, they undertake business activities that will require the input of human resource. And the fact that they require the input of human resource, it means that they will be able to need workers in order to help them undertake their activities, meaning that they are creating employment for the unemployed Zambians, besides themselves being the owners who are self-employed in such type of an undertaking, meaning that they are in a way contributing a certain bracket or a figure or a certain percentage in terms of, employment creation, as it were, especially in a country like ours, Steve. You learn that our country has got a lot of high unemployment levels, not only amongst the youth, but also amongst all the Zambian people. So you find that if we can have more entrepreneurship booming on the market, it will be able to reduce that figure bracket, that statistics, which is already recorded of high unemployment levels on the Zambian market, because the entrepreneurs now will be able to complement on the government efforts in as far as creating employment to all the Zambians are concerned.
Having talked there about that, with the dwindling economy that we have in Zambia today, the depreciation of the kwacha against the dollar and the like, how do you think the business entrepreneurs can actually come in and help the government grow our economy?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that we need to understand here, Steve. I know that the point that you have brought out is very decisive, because we have heard a lot of people talk about this from a lot of quarters. And people have been complaining to say our economy is not growing as it should. And besides, it's like most of the economic indicators are pointing to recession. I think there's one critical point that I need to bring out here, Steve. We must get to know that our economy is not a productive economy. It's a trading economy. And we are not only a trading economy, but we are also recipients of trade, as it were. Why have I said that? Why have I said that is because if you look at most of the local business investors as well as local business entrepreneurs, mostly what they do is buy and sell, which means that the type of business that they do is called merchandising type of business, or product merchandising, where you are buying and selling products and services so that you're able to get a markup, or rather a profit on top. You see, that in itself means that us as a country, we don't have much muscle, much power in terms of dictating terms to the economy so that it can grow in a way we want it to grow. The countries that are dictating much terms and those that are benefiting much from this type of a trade are those countries that are in production, those countries that are manufacturing the same products. And this is why, Steve, I've always said that for us to chart our way forward in terms of developing our economy, I think we must start encouraging the local investors, the local business entrepreneurs, as well as those foreign investors who are coming into the country, to become manufacturers, the producers of those products and services, so that now we can get to another level where we become an exporting economy. Because it will mean that we'll be able to earn forex out of the products that we'll be exporting. Unlike as it is now, Steve. you know that most of the products that are being floated on the Zambian market are just imported. The manufacturers are not ourselves. So that in itself has rendered our economy not to grow at a pace at which it is supposed to grow. And I'll tell you, Steve, that I was reading a newspaper, yesterday's newspaper. I quoted Mr. Smith, the spokesperson for Bank of Zambia, for World Bank, sorry, where he did say that our economy is growing at 3%. And of course he said it is a good indication in relation to some other African countries in terms of poverty reduction, because Zambia has done very well in the past years from 2005 to 2011 in terms of poverty, handling poverty issues and poverty reduction in relation to countries like Madagascar and Mauritius and, small countries like Malawi. But I think that's not enough. We need to do much more. And I think the solution lies in what I've said, Steve, going forward.
You have reminded me of an important issue that you've just talked about, the issue of importing and exporting. Do we have enough product as a country that we can export?
Steve, this is what I've said. I think the pivotal point to say here is that our economy, like I've said, it has relied much on the mines and the copper, whatever, and mostly whenever we have the economic indicators pointing to the recession, we tend to make much pronouncements about how our copper is faring badly on the international market. I think it's a question of now diversifying and valuing these entrepreneur businesses. And entrepreneur businesses might not just entail that we need to sell and buy. We are talking about people who are involved, small agricultural businessmen, because that's where much production should be done, so much that if we can transmit or rather transform these raw materials that we are growing as a country into finished products locally and be able to export them, we'll be able to make much more forex out of it. And like as it is, we make much emphasis on production so that when we harvest, we export raw materials, and yet the same raw materials will be made into finished products into some other foreign countries, who in turn, export those products, and we start importing them at a very exorbitant prices, which is a misfit already in as far as the expansion of our economy is concerned.
Now, what is the role of a business entrepreneur in this scenario where we import a lot? Most of the commodities that we're importing are the commodities that we have here in Zambia. A very good example is maybe some drinks that we buy, which are made of mangoes, pineapples, and you find that we have all these in our country. What should we do as a country to make use of these fruits that we have and make sure that we are the ones exporting in the near future?
A good question, Steve. I think before I even answer your question, I've pointed out in this book that I've authored, it's a 296 pages book, and it has got only 8 chapters. There's one point that I've pointed out to say, you see, a person who has never learned entrepreneurship lessons, how to survive outside employment sector, is likely to die. He might not survive, because you are not going to forever the rest of your life remain into formal employment. There will come at a certain time when the company is downsized, or rather you are retrenched, or rather it winds up, or rather something else happens, you retire with age. You see what I mean? But how are you going to survive on your own private undertaking if you don't know the entrepreneurship skills? And this is now getting to the question that you have asked. We need to start preparing people how they are going to manage their private lives when they are on their own, outside formal employment. One, I wouldn't want to see somebody dying a premature death because his formal job has been vanished and he has lost that socio-economic status in society. We have seen people in our society getting depressed because they cannot see light at the end of the tunnel. They thought all they knew is a formal job. So now, this is now when you should start getting into those companies, so that now we start inculcating, indoctrinating, teaching them the importance of this business entrepreneurship. To say the importance of business entrepreneur is the fact that you are able to face the future boldly with confidence, knowing that you can still make it in life and live a better life, even outside the formal employment job. You know, by creating now the private businesses that are lucrative, like the way you are talking about, pointing out to say, look, we have got a lot of mangoes. We can grow our own mangoes in this country. And why should we start exporting those mangoes? We can grow a lot of oranges. Why should we start exporting those raw oranges and lemons and apples and the avocados? Those fruits can be made, or rather be finished into finished products within our own country. And now, the critical point is this, Steve. And this is now where now we need to take the government to task. We have had a problem to think that government should do everything for its citizens. It should provide employment. It should do ABCD. Government should be perceived to be just a policy implementer and an institution that is able to create an enabling environment for private businesses to thrive. Now, if we get that understanding, we have talked about manufacturing these products local ourselves. Now, that's where now we should tell the government to say, look, normally small business entrepreneurs and the small business investors, they deal with very small capital, and they don't have that advanced state-of-the-art technological equipment and machinery. And this is why foreign investors tend to, you know, to be getting much bigger tenders because of better equipment and, you know, big, huge capital investment. So now we should tell the government, engage the government to say, play a facilitative role to help the local entrepreneurs and local investors in terms of importation and procurement of this latest out-of-state machinery into the country, which local businesses now can start using to manufacture these raw materials into finished products, as well as taking the government to task to say that provide a favorable, you know, tax rebate in terms of the importation of this latest machinery and equipment that can enable local investors to set their own industries where they will be able to manufacture this product into finished products, so that everything can happen within ourselves and be able to export to other countries. And in that way, our economy is going to grow at a pace that we are going to appreciate, to say, this is how we are supposed to live, and this is how our economy is going to be handled. It will not matter. And I must tell you this, Steve. To me, the way I look at it, probably it's not about the changing of the other government with another government. It's about what policies are they bringing in to favor the small business entrepreneur in as far as the running of the business is concerned. And I think that should be our point, where we should now develop our negotiating muscle and engage ourselves into protracted negotiations to make sure that government now start putting its policies in that direction.
You've talked about the engagement of our local investors into these different activities, but on several occasions, government has complained. A very good example would be on the local contractors on roads and other infrastructure development projects that are taking place across the country. It's either they do shoddy work or they abandon the project. What way did you have for the local investors if they have to gain government's confidence?
Good question, Steve. I like the question that you have brought up. And I think let me take this opportunity to say that the shoddy works, substandard, construction jobs, I think to me they are not attributable to the fact that we lack, proper human resource in this country. I will tell you that this country has now reached a level where it is producing one of the best human resource in terms of capacity building in the world. We have got the best engineers in this country. We have got the best doctors, name it, etc., etc. And I think it's not a question of saying that our human resources suffer from inferiority complex. I think I do disagree whoever's got that sentiment. I think our human resource is one of the best in the world. We can compete at any level, at any avenue. We have developed that type of human resource here. But I think the challenge that we still have is the challenge of the advanced state-of-the-art machinery and equipment. These foreign investors, they come with better machinery, better equipment. And even when it comes, like I've pointed out, for you to bid for a big tender as a small business entrepreneur, there's what they call security bid. If you are bidding, for instance, for argument's sake, Steve, you are bidding for a tender worth 2 billion kwacha, and then a local investor is dealing with a small capital, and you are told to say, we need to have the record of your bank statement so that we see the bid security, and they are putting the threshold, the minimum threshold of a bid security for such particular tender of maybe 500 million, for argument's sake, or 500,000 in the best currency. We are dealing with the best currency. And you find that that 500,000 probably is the capital, the total capital that a small business entrepreneur has already is disqualified. Before we even get to the equipment and the machinery, is just disqualified on the basis of the bid security that you are supposed to offer on a tendering process. You see, that already disadvantages a local investor or business entrepreneur in relation to a foreign investor. And that said, Steve, to make the matters worse, we are talking about construction of the roads. It requires huge investment, intensive capital investment. You need big trucks, you need bulldozers, you need excavators, and you're talking about equipment that has got capital intensive. And now, and this is why I'm saying, if we cannot engage the government to facilitate this type of equipment so that, as well as provide a favorable, rebate in terms of tax rebate in import, and like when you import them at an individual level, as an individual entrepreneur, they become more expensive that you cannot manage. You see what I mean? And this is why I'm saying that in terms of competing with, international, whatever you call them, foreign investors, I think for us to have a level playing field with them, I think we must start thinking in that direction. So much that I think we are not going to be disadvantaged. I think that is the way forward.
Do our local investors lack equipment?
That's what I've precisely said. We don't have the latest state of the art equipment because it is very expensive for us to procure it as individual unity, entrepreneurs. So if there was a way of the government facilitating that on our behalf, I think in that way we'll be able to also have an access to that latest state-of-the-art equipment, especially in the industry of construction, where such equipment is much needed for them to undertake such kind of works that are given out. And Steve, I'll tell you that, and this is a thing that most local businesses, or rather business entrepreneurs and business investors, have been crying out for, to say, it's like, foreign investors are getting a much bigger chunk in terms of the tenders and the businesses that the government gives out. You see what I mean? And this is why we initially we have been engaged ourselves in a lot of meetings. I remember that we have had meetings with the ZPPA, Zambia Public Procurement Authority, and I think I did talk to the deputy director myself when the meeting finished to make an emphasis in his office to say, look, there are some of the acts that we have read in ZPPA Procurement Act, like under section of the section of preservations and preferences and reservations. We told them to say, why don't you put something in place, a policy that will be deliberately put in place to say that whichever tenders that the government will be giving out to the businesses, at least a certain percentage, maybe you peg 40% of the total businesses being given out by the government to business entities should be specifically be meant to, directed to local business entrepreneurs, as it were, so that that is a fixed amount, and that is a fixed percentage, knowing that whatever happens, irrespective of how much influence and how much muscle in terms of a bigger strength the foreign investor might have over a local investor, but there will still be that advantage of knowing that a local investor will still get a 40% at the end of the day, and that in itself is going to favor a local investor. Unlike every time it is left open, and you find that mostly the local investor, him having a small capital, ends up maybe probably getting 15% out of the total 100%, and the whole 85% or 80% is gotten by the foreign investors. And what happens to your economy? This local investor will collect all the money that you have paid him for constructing all those works, and sends it back to his own country to develop his own country where he has come from, and you remain with nothing, and you start crying to say our economy is not performing well, and yet you are forgetting that yourselves, you are the ones who are making it not to perform well because of your mismanagement, because of the policies that you have put in place. So having good policies, having better management, I think we can have that money staying within our country, because that money, most of the tenders were given to local businesses, and meaning that a local business person, when he makes that money, is going to invest back the money within his own country, so that that will be able to catapult, or rather propel the economy to move forward and expand, as it were, and start doing better economically, not only at a national level but at a global level. We become more competitive.
In case you are just joining us now, you are watching Business Morning, and today we are looking at the importance of business entrepreneurship in the country's economic development, and we are featuring business entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and an author, Mr. Lewis Simpungwe Chizu, and we have discussed a lot on this particular topic. And I do recall, Mr. Chizu, you mentioned about the lack of equipment as far as our local investors are concerned. Is that the only challenge really that makes them have shoddy work?
No, the challenges are many. Apart from the equipment, lack of the equipment, we are also talking about the capital that we have talked about. You see, sometimes you find that even when you have offered a service to an institution like the government, you find that this government doesn't have enough funds to pay you on cash on delivery of the service. What they will tell you is that deliver the service first, then we are going to pay you afterwards, meaning that you have got to wait for the payment to be done. They have tied up part of your small capital already. As a small business entrepreneur, you see, now you find that instead of you having had to finish those works within the time frame given, because you have probably run out of funds, because the same institution that gave you the works to do have ended up tying your part of your capital, and you cannot procure further some of the inputs, the raw materials that are required for you to to finish up the type of the work that you are doing. So you find that besides them complaining of a shoddy work, the time schedules are not met in terms of the time when you are supposed to finish the work. I think those are some of the challenges, and this is why we would want the government and other institutions to improve on terms of payments, to make sure that instead of them saying deliver up front or well in advance, at least they create a situation where we are able to deliver on cash on delivery, because in that way there will be a fair deal to give you some space as well as some room for you to procure much more further materials as an input for the type of service, or rather the work that you are delivering, as it were.
Okay. Mr. Chizu, we have to end it here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
It has always been a pleasure, Mr. Steve. Thanks
All
very
right,
much
so
for having me.
okay, that's all we could accommodate on the program today. And remember that we were looking at the importance of business entrepreneurship in the country's economic development. I've been your host, Stephen Nkoma, and we did manage to host the business entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and author, Mr. Lewis Simpongwe Chizu. Till next time, God bless.